Ethan Cole hadn't cried in 3 years, not since he buried his canine partner in a flag-draped box, but when a tiny German Shepherd puppy collapsed at his patrol car door with blood-frozen paws and a torn police badge fragment around his neck. Something inside him cracked open. The blizzard hit Montana at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in January, the kind of storm that erased roads and swallowed headlights whole, 15 degrees below zero. Wind gusts strong enough to flip a truck. The kind of cold that turned breath into ice crystals before it left your lungs. Ethan sat alone in his patrol car on Highway 89, engine running, heater blasting, watching snow bury the world outside. 3 years since he left the Marines. 3 years since Afghanistan. 3 years since he held Valor's head in his lap and felt the life drain out of the only thing he trusted in this world. Now he was Officer Ethan Cole, badge number 1847, Ashford Police Department, Montana. Population 3,200. A town so small everyone knew everyone. A town where nothing ever happened. A town where a broken Marine could disappear and pretend the war never followed him home. He was wrong. The scratching came first. Soft, desperate, barely audible over the wind. Ethan turned his head toward the passenger window. Nothing but white. Endless white. Then it came again. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Not wind, not ice. Something alive. Ethan killed the engine. Silence rushed in thick and suffocating. He opened the door. The cold hit him like a fist. Snow swirled into the cabin, biting at his face, clawing at his uniform. He stepped out into the storm boots, sinking 6 inches into fresh powder. The scratching stopped. Ethan walked around the hood of the car flashlight, cutting a narrow beam through the chaos. The wind screamed. The world tilted white, and there, pressed against the passenger door, shaking so violently it looked like a seizure, was a German Shepherd puppy, 4 months old, maybe 5, all skin and ribs and terror. Ethan dropped to one knee. The puppy didn't run. It lifted one trembling paw and placed it on Ethan's boot. Then it looked up at him with eyes that held more desperation than any human Ethan had ever seen. The puppy's paws were bleeding. Not fresh blood, frozen blood, dark and crystallized around the pads like tiny red jewels. Its fur was matted with ice. Its breath came in short, panicked gasps. Around its neck, tied with frayed rope, hung a small piece of metal. Ethan reached out slowly. The puppy didn't flinch. It pressed its head into his gloved hand and released a sound that shattered every wall Ethan had built in 3 years. Not a whimper, not a a plea. Ethan's hands moved on instinct. He scooped the puppy into his arms, shielding it from the wind with his body. The little creature burrowed into his chest, shaking like it would never stop. Ethan carried it to the car, slid into the driver's seat, and wrapped the puppy in his jacket. For a long moment, he just sat there. Engine off, heater off, snow piling against the windshield, holding a dying puppy that had appeared out of nowhere in the middle of the worst storm in 20 years. Then he looked down at the metal piece around its neck. It wasn't a collar. It wasn't a tag. It was a fragment of a police badge. Torn, scratched, partially melted like it had been through fire. And stamped into the metal, barely visible under the grime, were 4 numbers. K9847. Ethan's blood turned colder than the air outside. Valor's number. His hands started shaking. He turned the badge fragment over. On the back, engraved in letters so small he had to squint, were 3 words. Bred by Valor. The world stopped. The storm disappeared. The cold vanished. All that existed was this tiny, trembling puppy pressed against his chest and the impossible truth burning through his mind. This wasn't a stray. This wasn't random. This was Valor's son. The Marines had a breeding program. Elite K9s who survived combat were retired to facilities where their bloodlines continued. Valor had sired a litter 6 months before his death. Ethan knew because he'd been sent the paperwork. He'd thrown it away without reading it. Couldn't bear the thought of seeing Valor's legacy walking around while Valor rotted in the ground. But here it was. Here he was, Valor's son, 4 months old, bleeding, freezing, alone in a blizzard, and he had found Ethan. The puppy lifted its head, its eyes locked onto Ethan's, and in that moment, Ethan understood. This wasn't coincidence. This was instinct, genetic memory, the same drive that made Valor run toward gunfire instead of away from it, the same loyalty that kept Valor standing guard over him even with 3 bullets in his side. This puppy had inherited more than Valor's looks. He'd inherited his mission. Find the handler, protect the handler, trust the handler. Ethan's throat tightened. He stroked the puppy's head, felt a tiny skull beneath his palm, fragile as an egg. The puppy leaned into the touch, eyes sliding closed for just a second. Exhausted, spent, safe. But then its eyes snapped open, its ears shot forward. A low whine escaped its throat. Not fear, urgency. The puppy squirmed in Ethan's arms, twisting toward the passenger window. It barked once, sharp, insistent. Then it looked back at Ethan, whined again, and pawed at the door. Ethan frowned. You want me to follow you? The puppy barked again, louder this time, its whole body vibrating with desperate energy. Ethan's instincts kicked in. The same instincts that kept him alive through 2 tours. The same instincts that told him when an empty street wasn't really empty. The same instincts that whispered danger before his brain could process why. Something was wrong, very wrong. He set the puppy on the passenger seat, started the engine, and turned the heater to maximum. The puppy immediately scrambled to the window, paws on the glass, barking at the darkness beyond. Ethan grabbed his radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I've got a situation on Highway 89, mile marker 47. I'm going to need backup. Static crackled. Unit 12, what's your situation? Ethan looked at the puppy, at the blood on its paws, at the terror still shaking its small frame. I don't know yet, but I'm about to find out. He clipped the radio, checked his sidearm, grabbed his heavy flashlight, and opened the door. The storm hit him again, colder now, meaner. The puppy leaped from the seat and landed in the snow, immediately sinking to its chest. But it didn't stop. It pushed forward, head down, ears flat, moving with a determination that didn't belong in something so small. Ethan followed. They left the road behind. The puppy led him into the trees, into the forest that bordered the highway, into darkness so complete his flashlight felt like a candle in a cave. Snow fell in sheets. Wind tore at his jacket. His breath came out in clouds that vanished instantly. The puppy stopped every few feet, looking back to make sure Ethan was still there. And every time Ethan nodded, I'm here, buddy. Keep going. The forest swallowed them. 20 yards and Ethan's boot caught on something. He stopped, aimed his flashlight down. A zipper, small, silver, the kind that belonged on a purse or a jacket pocket. He crouched, picked it up, turned it over in his gloved hand. Fresh, no rust, no corrosion. It had been here hours, not days. The puppy barked from ahead, urging him forward. Ethan pocketed the zipper and kept moving. The trail was faint, almost invisible, but the puppy never hesitated. It wove through the trees like it had walked this path 100 times. Nose to the ground, ears swiveling. Every instinct locked onto something Ethan couldn't see yet. 50 yards deeper, the puppy stopped at the base of a massive pine tree. It sniffed the ground, circled twice, then sat, waiting. Ethan approached, flashlight sweeping. At first he saw nothing, just snow, just roots, just shadows. Then the beam caught something that didn't belong. A phone, shattered. Screen spider-webbed with cracks, lying half buried in the snow like someone had dropped it while running. Ethan bent down, careful not to disturb it more than necessary. He brushed snow from the screen. The phone was locked, but the wallpaper was still visible through the cracks. A young woman, late 20s, dark hair, bright smile, holding a German Shepherd puppy, the same puppy now sitting beside Ethan's boot. Ethan's pulse quickened. This wasn't a lost dog. This was a witness, a guide, a survivor leading him to someone who wasn't. The puppy stood, barked once, and moved again. Faster now, more urgent. Ethan followed. 100 yards. The trees thinned slightly. The ground sloped downward, and there scattered across the snow like debris from a crash were the remnants of a struggle. A purse torn open, contents spilled everywhere. Lipstick, keys, tampons, receipts. And among the wreckage, half buried beneath a drift, something small and red. A USB drive. Ethan knelt. The drive was still plugged into a keychain, the kind with a retractable cable. Whoever dropped this hadn't meant to. It had been ripped away during a fight. He picked it up, turned it over, and saw written in black Sharpie across the plastic casing 9 words that changed everything. Hale's accounts. Copy 2. Do not lose. Ethan's jaw tightened. Sheriff Raymond Hale, the most powerful man in 3 counties, a local legend, 30 years on the job, elected 5 times without opposition, the kind of man who shook hands at church and sponsored little league teams. And someone had made a backup of his financial accounts. The puppy barked. Not urgent this time. Terrified. Ethan looked up. The puppy stood 20 feet ahead, body rigid, hackles raised, staring at something in the darkness. A low growl rumbled from its chest. The same growl Valor used to make when he sensed an enemy before Ethan could. Ethan drew his weapon. "What is it, buddy?" The puppy growled again. Then it bolted forward. Ethan ran after it, boots pounding through snow, flashlight bouncing wildly. The puppy disappeared around a cluster of bushes. Ethan followed branches, whipping his face, and then the ground dropped away. He skidded to a stop at the edge of a shallow embankment. Below him, illuminated in the pale beam of his flashlight, was a scene pulled straight from a nightmare. Blood, frozen in dark streaks across white snow. Drag marks, deep, long, leading away into the trees. Boot prints, 2 sets, large, military-grade treads, and scattered around the blood like evidence at a crime scene, more pieces of a life torn apart. A scarf, a glove, a broken earring. The puppy stood in the center of it all, shaking, not from cold, from memory. Ethan holstered his weapon and slid down the embankment. He approached the puppy, slowly, carefully, the way he used to approach Valor after a firefight. "Easy, little soldier. I've got you." The puppy didn't move. It just stared at the blood, at the place where someone had fought and lost. Ethan scanned the area with his flashlight. The drag marks led northwest, deeper into the forest. Whoever had been here, they'd been taken, pulled, dragged through the snow while bleeding. And this puppy had seen it all. He keyed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I need immediate backup at my current location. We have a possible abduction scene. Multiple evidence markers. I'm tracking northwest from Highway 89, approximately 200 yards into the tree line." "Copy that, Unit 12. Backup is en route. ETA 6 minutes. Ethan clipped the radio and looked at the puppy. The little creature was still frozen, staring at the blood. Ethan reached down, scooped it into his arms, and held it against his chest. The puppy burrowed into his jacket, trembling. "You did good," Ethan whispered. "You brought me here. You did exactly what Valor would have done." The puppy, shaking, slowed. Just a little. Just enough. Ethan turned, flashlight sweeping the darkness. Somewhere out there, beyond the trees, beyond the storm, someone was hurt. Someone was scared. Someone needed help. And Ethan Cole, broken Marine, washed-up cop man who swore he'd never trust anything again, was going to find them. Because a puppy with frozen paws and his dead partner's blood in its veins had asked him to, and Ethan never broke a promise to a K9. The backup arrived in a storm of red and blue lights that turned the forest into a nightmare disco. 3 patrol cars, an unmarked SUV, and stepping out of that SUV, moving with the slow confidence of a man who owned every room he walked into, was Detective Carter Daniels, 42 years old, square jaw, cold eyes, 20 years on the force, The kind of cop who wore his authority like a second skin. The kind of cop who never smiled unless he was about to ruin your day. Daniels approached the embankment, boots crunching through snow, and stopped at the edge. He looked down at Ethan at the blood at the evidence scattered like confetti, and his expression didn't change. Not shock, not concern, just a flicker of something Ethan couldn't quite read. Annoyance. Cole. Daniel's voice was flat, neutral. The voice of a man who had seen 1,000 crime scenes and stopped carrying around number 500. What do we have? Ethan climbed up the slope, puppy still tucked against his chest. Abduction, female victim based on personal effects. 2 attackers, military-grade boots, dragged her northwest approximately 2 hours ago based on blood coagulation. Daniel's eyes flicked to the puppy and the dog witness. Daniels raised an eyebrow. Come again? Ethan held up the torn badge fragment. This puppy led me here. It belonged to the victim, and it's not giving up until we find her. Daniel stared at the badge for a long moment. Then he looked at Ethan. Looked at him the way people in this town always looked at him. Like he was broken. Like the war had scrambled his brain and left him chasing ghosts in the snow. Cole Daniel said slowly, "You're telling me you initiated a full-scale search and rescue operation because a puppy barked at you?" Ethan's jaw tightened. He pulled the USB drive from his pocket and held it up. "And I'm telling you someone made a backup of Sheriff Hale's financial accounts and ended up bleeding in the woods 2 hours later. You think that's a coincidence?" The change in Daniels was subtle. A twitch at the corner of his mouth. A slight widening of his pupils. A half-second pause before he reached for the drive. "Let me secure that evidence." Ethan's instincts screamed. The same instincts that told him when a door was rigged, when a smile was a lie, when a friend was about to put a bullet in your back. He closed his fist around the drive. "I'll log it at the station." Daniel's hands stopped mid-reach. His eyes went hard. "Cole, I'm the lead detective on this case. Evidence goes through me, and I'm the responding officer. Chain of custody starts with me." The 2 men stared at each other. The storm howled around them. Other officers moved through the scene, taking photos, marking evidence, pretending not to notice the standoff happening 3 feet away. The puppy growled, low, guttural, the sound Valor used to make when he sensed danger. Daniels looked down at the puppy, then back at Ethan. "Fine, log it. But I want a full report on my desk by 0800. He turned and walked away, barking orders at the other officers. Ethan watched him go, every instinct screaming that he just made an enemy. The puppy's growl faded. It pressed tighter against Ethan's chest, small body still trembling. Ethan looked down at it. "You don't like him, do you?" The puppy's ears flattened. "Yeah," Ethan stroked its head. "Me neither." An hour later, the scene was swarming with personnel. Crime scene techs documenting blood spatter, search and rescue teams organizing grid patterns, a K9 unit that showed up with a trained German Shepherd who took one look at Ethan's puppy and whined like it recognized a superior. Ethan stood at the edge of it all, watching, listening, noticing. Daniels was on his phone, talking low, turned away from the crowd. Ethan couldn't hear the words, but he could read body language. The stiff shoulders, the clenched fist, the way Daniels kept glancing back at Ethan like he was a problem that needed solving. One of the techs approached Ethan, a young woman with snow in her hair and evidence bags in her hands. "Officer Cole, we found something." She held up a plastic bag. Inside was a crumpled piece of paper stained with blood and snow. Ethan took it, held it up to his flashlight. It was a note, handwritten, shaky letters like it had been written in a hurry. "Don't trust the police." Ethan's blood went cold. "Where did you find this?" "In the victim's coat pocket." Whoever she was, she knew something was wrong. Ethan looked across the scene at Daniels. The detective was still on his phone, still turned away, still radiating tension like a bomb about to detonate. The puppy barked, sharp, urgent. Ethan followed its gaze. The drag marks led deeper into the forest, toward a section of woods so dense the searchlights couldn't penetrate. And the puppy was staring at that darkness like it held every answer in the world. You want to keep going, don't you? The puppy looked up at Ethan. Its eyes were clear, focused, determined. Ethan made a decision. He turned to the tech. I'm following the trail. Tell Daniels I'm pursuing the lead. Sir, we have search teams for that. And I have a witness who knows exactly where to go. He didn't wait for a response. He just walked into the tree's flashlight, cutting through the dark puppy leading the way. The forest grew denser, darker, colder. The sounds of the search party faded behind them until all that remained was wind and breathing and the soft crunch of snow under boots. The puppy moved with purpose now. No hesitation, no fear, just pure genetic drive. The same drive that made its father charge into enemy fire to save wounded Marines. The same drive that kept Valor fighting even when his body was shutting down. Ethan followed. He'd learned a long time ago to trust a canine's instincts over his own. Dogs didn't lie. Dogs didn't have agendas. Dogs just knew. 200 yards deeper, the puppy stopped. Its nose lifted, catching a scent. Then it turned sharply left off the trail into underbrush, so thick Ethan had to force his way through. Branches tore at his jacket, snow dumped from overhead cascading down his neck. His flashlight beam bounced wildly, and then suddenly the forest opened up. A clearing, small, hidden, the kind of place you'd only find if you knew it was there. And in the center of that clearing, half buried in snow, was a cabin. Ethan froze. The cabin was old, abandoned, windows boarded up, door hanging crooked on rusted hinges. The kind of place teenagers use for parties and drug dealers use for deals. The kind of place you'd take someone if you didn't want them found. The puppy ran to the door, barking frantically. Ethan approached slowly, weapon drawn, every sense on high alert. He reached the door, tested it. Unlocked. He pushed it open. The smell hit him first. Blood, sweat, fear, the smell of violence that had happened recently. He swept his flashlight across the interior. One room, dirt floor, broken furniture, and along the back wall, evidence that made Ethan's stomach turn. Chains, bolted to the wall, opened, empty, but recently used based on the fresh scratches in the rust. Duct tape, torn pieces scattered across the floor. Blood, spattered across the wall, dried, hours old, and scrawled into the dirt with a trembling hand barely visible in the flashlight beam, were 4 words that confirmed Ethan's worst fear. They took Jenna too. Ethan's mind raced. This wasn't random. This wasn't a one-time abduction. This was a pattern, a system, multiple victims, multiple crimes. And Sheriff Hale's name was on a USB drive carried by one of those victims. The puppy whined from the corner. Ethan turned his light. The puppy was pawing at something in the dirt. Ethan walked over, knelt down, brushed snow and debris aside. A wallet. Women's, leather, expensive. He opened it. Inside was a driver's license. Sarah Mitchell, age 29, address in Ashford. Occupation listed on a business card tucked behind the licensed forensic accountant district attorney's office. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. Forensic accountant. The person who audits financial records. The person who would have access to county budgets, construction contracts, law enforcement expenditures. The person who could uncover corruption. He pocketed the wallet, pulled out his radio, and keyed it. Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I've found a secondary scene. Abandoned cabin, evidence of multiple victims, possible ongoing criminal enterprise. I need all available units at my location immediately. Static, then a voice, not dispatch. Daniels. Cole, where are you? Ethan hesitated. Every instinct told him not to answer. But protocol was protocol, and he was still a cop. Northwest of the primary scene. Quarter mile. There's a cabin. You need to see this. Stay there. I'm coming to you. The line went dead. Ethan looked down at the puppy. The little creature was staring at the door, hackles raised, growling. Ethan holstered his weapon and picked up the puppy. Easy, buddy. Backup's coming. But the puppy didn't stop growling. And somewhere in the distance, getting closer, Ethan could hear the crunch of boots through snow. He turned toward the sound. Daniels emerged from the tree's flashlight in one hand, radio in the other. Two officers flanked him, all three of them moving with purpose. Daniel stepped into the cabin, swept his light across the scene, and his face remained perfectly blank. No shock, no horror, just that same flat neutrality. He looked at Ethan, looked at the chains, looked at the message scrawled in the dirt. And when he spoke, his voice was calm, too calm. "Hell of a find, Cole. We'll get forensics out here immediately." Ethan watched him carefully. "You don't seem surprised." Daniel's eyes flicked to him. "Surprised that there are multiple victims, that this is bigger than a random abduction." Daniel shrugged. "I've been a cop for 20 years, Cole. Nothing surprises me anymore." The puppy's growl intensified. Daniels looked down at it. "Still got that dog, huh?" "It's evidence." Daniel smiled. Didn't look friendly. "Right. Evidence." He turned to the other officers. "Secure the scene. Full workup. I want every inch documented." The officers moved to comply. Daniels walked past Ethan, heading for the door. Then he paused, turned back. "Cole, that drive you found, the one with Hale's name on it, make sure it gets to me. Tonight, it'll be logged into evidence. You can access it through proper channels." Daniel's smile faded. "I'm not asking as a colleague, Cole. I'm telling you as the lead detective. That drive is critical evidence in an active investigation. I need it. Now." Ethan held his gaze. "And I'm telling you as the responding officer that evidence goes through proper chain of custody. You'll have access to it. Tomorrow, through the system." The temperature in the cabin dropped 10 degrees. Daniel stared at Ethan for a long, dangerous moment. Then he nodded. "Fine, do it your way." He walked out into the storm. The puppy stopped growling. It looked up at Ethan with eyes that held a question. "What now?" Ethan stroked its head. "Now we find Sarah Mitchell. Before Daniels does." He walked out of the cabin into the blizzard. Behind him, the message scrawled in the dirt seemed to glow in the flashlight beams. "They took Jenna too." And somewhere in the darkness, a phone rang. Daniels pulled it from his pocket, turned away from the other officers, and answered. His voice was low, controlled. But Ethan, 50 yards away with a soldier's hearing, caught every word. "We have a problem. She's alive, and Cole has the drive." A pause. Daniels listened. His shoulders tensed. "Then finish it. Tonight." Daniels ended the call, slipped the phone back into his pocket, turned around and smiled at the officers like nothing had happened. Ethan stood in the shadows at the tree line, puppy pressed against his chest, and felt the world shift beneath his feet. He'd spent 3 years trying to escape the war. 3 years trying to forget what it felt like to be hunted. 3 years trying to convince himself that home was safe. He was wrong. The war had followed him, and this time the enemy wore a badge. The ambulance screamed through the storm sirens, cutting through wind and snow like a knife through silk. Inside, Sarah Mitchell lay strapped to a gurney oxygen mask, fogging with each shallow breath IV, dripping clear fluid into veins that had been empty of hope 2 hours ago. Ethan sat on the bench beside her, one hand gripping the overhead rail, the other cradling the puppy against his chest. Scout hadn't stopped shaking, not from cold anymore, from memory, from the kind of trauma that burrows into the bones and stays there. The paramedic, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and steady hands, checked Sarah's vitals for the 3rd time. Blood pressure stabilizing. Core temps coming up. She's one of the lucky ones. Ethan looked at the woman on the gurney. Bruises blooming across her face like dark flowers. Split lip, swollen eye. Dried blood caked in her hairline. Lucky wasn't the word he'd use. The paramedic followed his gaze. "I've seen worse that didn't make it. Whatever happened out there, she fought hard." The puppy whined. Sarah's fingers twitched. Ethan leaned forward. "Sarah, can't you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, struggled, opened halfway. Unfocused eyes drifted across the ceiling, searching for anchor points. When they found Ethan's face, they went wide. Terrified, she tried to scream. The oxygen mask muffled it into a wet gasp. Her body jerked against the straps, heart monitor screaming, panic flooding every nerve. The paramedic moved fast, hands gentle but firm on Sarah's shoulders. "You're safe. You're in an ambulance. You're safe." But Sarah wasn't listening. She was staring at Ethan's uniform, at the badge on his chest, at the gun on his hip, and the fear in her eyes told him everything he needed to know. She thought he was one of them. Ethan stood slowly, hands visible, palms open. He took 2 steps back, putting distance between himself and the gurney. "I'm not here to hurt you. Your dog found me. He led me to you." At the word dog, Sarah's eyes snapped to the puppy. Scout was already squirming in Ethan's arms, desperate to reach her. Ethan set him on the gurney. The puppy scrambled up Sarah's body, careful of the IV line, and pressed his face into her neck. Sarah's panic shattered. Her arms came up slow and shaking and wrapped around the tiny creature. A sound came out of her that wasn't quite a song, wasn't quite a laugh, just pure broken relief. "Scout!" She could barely whisper through the mask. "You're alive. Oh God, you're alive." The puppy licked her face, her tears, her bruises, like he could heal her with devotion alone. Sarah looked up at Ethan over Scout's head. Her eyes were different now, still afraid, but searching, trying to decide if trust was possible. "You followed him all the way." "Why? Because he asked me to, and because I used to work with his father." Sarah blinked, confused. Then she looked at Scout, really looked, saw the shape of his face, the set of his ears, the intensity in his eyes that didn't belong in a puppy. Her voice cracked. "Valor," Ethan nodded. "This is his son." Fresh tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. She buried her face in Scout's fur and shook with silent sobs. The puppy pressed closer, whining softly the way dogs do when they know words won't help. The ambulance pulled into the hospital bay. Lights, noise, organized chaos. Doctors and nurses swarmed the moment the doors opened. Sarah was transferred to a gurney wheeled through automatic doors, swallowed by the fluorescent brightness of the emergency room. Ethan tried to follow. A nurse stopped him with a hand on his chest. "Family only beyond this point, officer. I'm the one who found her, and we're grateful. But she needs treatment now. You can see her once she's stable." The doors swung shut. Sarah disappeared behind them. Scout barked once sharp and desperate from somewhere beyond the glass. Ethan stood in the hallway, wet snow melting off his boots, radio crackling with chatter about the crime scene, and felt the weight of the last 4 hours settle onto his shoulders like a lead blanket. He pulled the USB drive from his pocket, turned it over in his hand. Hale's accounts. Copy 2. Do not lose. He needed to see what was on this drive, needed to know what Sarah had uncovered, needed to understand why 2 men had dragged her into the woods to die. But Daniels wanted it bad enough to corner Ethan in a cabin and demand it, bad enough to make a phone call that ended with "finish it tonight." Ethan wasn't stupid. He'd been a Marine long enough to know what those words meant. He pocketed the drive and walked to the security desk. The officer on duty looked up, saw Ethan's uniform, nodded. "Help ya, I need access to a computer. Private room if you've got it." The officer pointed down a hallway. "Third door on the left. It's a storage room, but there's a workstation. Passwords written on the monitor." Ethan found the room, locked the door, sat down at the ancient desktop computer and plugged in the drive. It took 30 seconds to load. When it did, Ethan's blood ran cold. Spreadsheets, hundreds of them. Bank accounts, wire transfers, shell companies with names like Mountain Investments, LLC, and Ashford Development Group. Money moving in patterns that made no sense unless you knew what you were looking for. And Ethan knew. He'd seen this before. In Afghanistan, warlords hiding drug money through fake construction projects. Taliban commanders routing weapons payments through legitimate businesses. This was the same thing, just happening in Montana instead of Kandahar. He scrolled through the files, found a folder labeled County Projects, opened it. His stomach dropped. The new dam construction, $12 million approved by the county commissioners. Contracted to Hale Enterprises, a company owned by Sheriff Raymond Hale's brother. Except according to these records, only $4 million had actually been spent on construction. The other $8 million had been transferred through 3 shell companies and deposited into offshore accounts. It wasn't just corruption, it was systematic theft. Tax dollars vanishing into private pockets while the county infrastructure crumbled. And Sarah Mitchell, forensic accountant for the district attorney's office, had found it. Ethan kept digging. Found more. A police equipment contract. $300,000 for new patrol vehicles. Except the vehicles were purchased used for half that price. The rest vanished into the same shell companies. A courthouse renovation. A road repair project. A public school upgrade. Every single one of them inflated. Every single one of them funneling money to Hale. Over the past 5 years, Sheriff Raymond Hale had stolen nearly $20 million from the people he had sworn to protect. Ethan sat back in the chair, ran a hand over his face. Now he understood. Sarah hadn't just uncovered corruption, she'd uncovered a criminal empire, and Hale couldn't let her live. The question was, how many people were helping him? How deep did this go? Ethan thought about Daniels, about the phone call, about the way the detective had looked at the USB drive like it was a live grenade. He copied the files to the computer's hard drive. Then he copied them again to a second USB found in the desk drawer. Insurance. If something happened to him, there'd be a backup. He was shutting down the computer when his radio crackled. All units be advised, Detective Daniels is requesting Officer Cole's location for case consultation. Ethan didn't respond. He pocketed both drives, left the storage room, and headed back toward the emergency department. He needed to see Sarah, needed to warn her, needed to figure out how many people in his own department wanted her dead. He found her in a recovery room, alone, bandaged, bruised, but awake. Scout was curled on the bed beside her head, resting on her arm, eyes tracking every movement in the hallway like a sentry on duty. Ethan knocked softly on the doorframe. Sarah looked up. Her expression was guarded. Careful. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck. Her voice was rough, raw. They said you saved my life. Scout saved your life. I just followed directions. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Valor, son. I should have known. She stroked Scout's head. He's been acting strange for weeks, like he sensed something coming. Ethan stepped into the room, closed the door behind him. Sarah, I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to be honest with me. Do you trust anyone in the Ashford Police Department? Her smile vanished. Her eyes went hard. No. Ethan nodded. Good, because neither do I. He pulled out a chair, sat down facing her, kept his voice low. I opened the USB drive. I know what you found, and I know why they tried to kill you. Sarah's hands clenched in the blanket. Who's they, Sheriff Hale? Maybe more. I don't know how deep this goes yet, but I know Detective Daniels is involved. Sarah's face went pale. Carter Daniels. You know him. He's the one who told me to stop digging. 3 weeks ago, came to my office, said the DA was concerned I was wasting time on dead-end audits, said I should focus on more productive cases. Ethan's jaw tightened. But you didn't stop. I couldn't. The numbers didn't make sense. Millions of dollars disappearing into shell companies. Projects that should have been audited years ago. I kept digging, found more, made copies, sent one to the FBI. Ethan sat forward. You sent evidence to the FBI, certified mail, 2 days ago. They should have it by tomorrow. That's why they moved tonight. They knew time was running out. Sarah nodded slowly. I was on my way home from the office, late. I just finished copying the last files. 2 men grabbed me in the parking garage. One of them hit me. The other one took my purse. They threw me in a van, drove me into the woods. What happened to Jenna Brooks? Sarah's eyes filled. She helped me. She was my assistant. When I told her what I'd found, she agreed to help organize the data. 2 days ago, she didn't show up for work. I went to her apartment. Door was open. Signs of struggle, blood on the carpet. I called the police. They said they'd investigate, but they didn't. No, they told me she'd probably left town. Relationship problems. They dismissed it because they're the ones who took her. Sarah's voice broke. Is she alive? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Scout lifted his head. His ears shot forward. A low growl rumbled from his chest. Ethan stood, hand moving to his weapon. What is it? Scout was staring at the door, hackles raised, body tense. The same posture he'd held when Daniels appeared at the crime scene. Footsteps in the hallway, getting closer. Heavy boots, deliberate pace. Ethan moved to the door, looked through the small window. Carter Daniels was walking down the corridor, flanked by two uniformed officers Ethan didn't recognize. They weren't local. State police, maybe, or something worse. Daniels stopped at the nurse's station, showed his badge, pointed towards Sarah's room. Ethan's mind raced. They couldn't run. Sarah could barely walk. Scout was a puppy, and Ethan was one cop with a sidearm against three armed men who'd already proven they were willing to kill. He turned back to Sarah. We need to leave. Now, I can't walk. Then I'll carry you. Where are we going to go? They'll find us. Ethan pulled out his phone, sent a single text to the one person he still trusted, his old Marine buddy. Jake. Civilian now, owned a hunting cabin 40 miles north. Need help. Don't ask questions. Sending coordinates. The reply came back in seconds. On my way. Ethan pocketed the phone. Looked at Sarah. Do you trust me? She looked at Scout. The puppy had stopped growling. He was looking at Ethan with calm, steady eyes. The way Valor used to look when he knew the handler had a plan. Sarah took a breath. Yes, then let's move. He disconnected her IV, helped her sit up, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, scooped Scout into her arms. Then he lifted her like she weighed nothing, one arm under her knees, one supporting her back. The hallway had a service exit. Ethan had clocked it when he first entered. Old habit, always know where the exits are. He carried Sarah through the door, down a concrete stairwell that smelled like bleach and fear, and out into the hospital parking lot. Snow was still falling, lighter now, the storm breaking. His patrol car was where he'd left it. He set Sarah in the passenger seat, Scout in her lap, and slid behind the wheel. Ethan's radio crackled. All units be advised. Officer Cole has removed a witness from protective custody. Consider him armed and dangerous. Do not approach alone. Sarah went rigid. They're calling you a criminal. Ethan started the engine. Yeah, they're good at that. He pulled out of the parking lot, lights off, moving slow. In the rearview mirror, he saw Daniels burst through the hospital doors, phone to his ear, rage twisting his face. Ethan drove. 20 minutes later, they were on a back road that didn't have a name. No street lights, no houses, just forest and snow and darkness that swallowed headlights whole. Sarah hadn't spoken since they left. She just held Scout and stared out the window like she was watching her life dissolve in real time. Finally, she whispered, Where are we going? Somewhere they won't think to look. You can't run forever. I'm not running. I'm regrouping. Ethan's phone buzzed. Text from Jake, coordinates received, cabins unlocked, food in the pantry, rifle under the bed. Stay safe, brother. Ethan didn't reply. He just kept driving. 30 miles north of Ashford, the road turned to gravel, then dirt, then barely a trail. Ethan's patrol car wasn't made for this terrain, but he forced it through engine-grinding tires, spinning in deep snow. The cabin appeared like a ghost, small, dark, buried in trees so thick they formed a canopy that blocked out the sky. Ethan pulled up to the porch, killed the engine, listened. Nothing. Just wind, just silence. He helped Sarah inside, settled her on the couch, started a fire in the old stone fireplace. Scout explored the cabin, sniffing every corner, checking windows, acting like he'd done this 100 times before. Sarah watched him. He's different here. Calm. He knows we're safe. For now. Ethan found the rifle Jake mentioned. Loaded. Ready. He set it by the door. Then he pulled out the USB drive and plugged it into an old laptop he found on a desk in the corner. Sarah stood wobbled, caught herself on the couch. What are you doing? Figuring out how to end this. He opened the files, started cross-referencing names, shell companies, bank accounts, wire transfers, building a map of corruption that spread like a spider web through every level of county government. Sarah limped over, looked over his shoulder. You're going to expose them. I'm going to bury them. They'll kill you. Ethan didn't look up from the screen. They can try. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she said softly, why are you doing this? You don't know me. You could have just logged the evidence and walked away. Ethan stopped typing, looked at Scout. The puppy was sitting by the fire staring at Ethan with eyes that held more trust than any human had given him in 3 years. Because a dog asked me to, and I don't break promises to dogs. Sarah's eyes filled. She sank onto the couch, wrapped her arms around herself. I thought I was going to die out there. I thought no one would find me. I thought Scout was dead. I thought everything I'd worked for was going to disappear into the snow. But it didn't, no, because you followed him. Ethan turned back to the computer, kept working. Hours passed. The fire burned low. Sarah fell asleep on the couch, exhausted. Scout curled up beside her, one paw on her arm. Ethan working through the night, building a case, documenting every transaction, every shell company, every fake contract, creating a file so airtight even a corrupt prosecutor couldn't ignore it. At 4:30 a.m., his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Didn't speak. A voice he recognized. Daniels. Cold. Measured. Ethan, you're making a mistake. Bring the girl back. Surrender the evidence. We can work this out. Ethan looked at Sarah, at Scout, at the files on the screen. No, we can't. You have no idea what you're up against. Hale has connections. Judges, senators, people who can make you disappear. Then I better make sure the truth gets out before that happens. Silence on the line. Then Daniel said quietly, I tried to warn you, no. You tried to threaten me. There's a difference, Adigawain. Ethan ended the call. Scout's head lifted, ears forward, a low growl. Ethan stood, grabbed the rifle, moved to the window. Headlights. 2 vehicles, moving slowly up the trail. No sirens, no lights. They'd been found. Ethan turned to Sarah. She was awake now, eyes wide, terrified. He kept his voice calm. There's a root cellar under the kitchen. Hatch hidden under the rug. Get in there. Take Scout. Don't come out until I say your name 3 times. What are you going to do? What I was trained for. Sarah grabbed Scout, moved toward the kitchen. Paused at the doorway. Ethan, he looked at her. Don't die. He almost smiled. I'll do my best. She disappeared into the floor. The hatch closed. Silence. Ethan checked the rifle. Full magazine. Good. He positioned himself by the window lights, off fire dying, waiting. The vehicle stopped 50 yards from the cabin. Doors opened. 4 men got out. No uniforms, civilian clothes. But they moved like cops, tactical, coordinated, weapons drawn. One of them was Daniels. Ethan recognized 2 others, deputies from Ashford, men he'd worked with, men he'd trusted. The 4th man was older, 60s, gray hair, expensive jacket, moving with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his entire life. Sheriff Raymond Hale. They approached the cabin, spread out, covering angles. Daniels took point weapon, raised, moving with the precision of someone who'd cleared 100 buildings. He stopped at the porch, raised his voice. Ethan, we know you're in there. Come out. Let's talk. Ethan didn't respond. We don't want to hurt you. We just want the girl and the evidence. Give us that. You walk away. Ethan chambered around. The sound echoed in the darkness. Daniel sighed. Wrong choice. He gestured to the other men. They moved toward the door. Hale stayed back, watching, waiting. Ethan aimed through the window, not at Daniels, at the sheriff, the man who'd started this. The man who'd stolen millions. The man who'd ordered Sarah's death. His finger tightened on the trigger. Then Scout barked. From inside the cellar, loud, urgent, warning. The men froze. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He's not alone. Hale smiled. Even better. Ethan's radio crackled. A voice he didn't expect. Jake's. Ethan, if you can hear this, hit the deck. Now, Ethan dropped. 3 seconds later, the night exploded with light. Floodlights from the tree line blinding white, turning darkness into noon. A voice boomed over a megaphone. This is the FBI. Drop your weapons. You are surrounded. Ethan lifted his head. Through the window, he saw them. Agents, dozens of them, pouring out of the forest like shadows coming to life. Vehicles blocking the trail, helicopters overhead, a full tactical response. Daniels dropped his weapon. The deputies followed. But Hale just stood there, fury twisting his face. An agent approached him. Sheriff Raymond Hale, you're under arrest for embezzlement, corruption, conspiracy to commit murder, and about 15 other charges we'll add later. You have the right to remain silent. Hale spat. You have no authority here. The agent smiled. Actually, we do, thanks to a very detailed file sent to our office 2 days ago by Sarah Mitchell, and a follow-up package we received tonight from a concerned citizen. Ethan stood, walked to the door, opened it. Jake was standing on the porch, 40 years old, built like a tank, grinning like an idiot. You always did know how to throw a party. How did you texted me coordinates. I texted the FBI the same coordinates plus a note that said, wanted fugitive Officer Cole is holding a witness and has evidence of county corruption. Figured they'd move fast. Ethan stared at his friend. You set me up. Jake shrugged. You set yourself up. I just made sure the right people showed up to help. An FBI agent approached. Older, graying hair, sharp eyes. Officer Cole, I'm Special Agent Morrison. We've been investigating Sheriff Hale for 6 months. Your witness's evidence was the final piece we needed. Where is she? Ethan turned toward the cabin. Called out. Sarah, 3 times. It's over. The cellar hatch opened. Sarah emerged, Scout in her arms, covered in dust and cobwebs and hope. Morrison smiled. Miss Mitchell, good to finally meet you in person. Sarah looked at the agents, at Hale in handcuffs, at Daniels being led toward a van. Then she looked at Ethan. We won. Ethan nodded. Yeah, we won. Scout barked, once, triumphant. But Morrison's expression shifted. She turned away from the celebration, walked toward the tree line. Ethan followed her gaze. 2 body bags being loaded into a van, the FBI agents who'd been stationed at the property entrance, the ones whose car had exploded. Morrison stood there for a long moment, shoulders tight, jaw clenched. Then she turned back to Ethan. Her voice was cold, professional, but her eyes held the kind of rage that only comes from losing people under your command. 2 good agents died tonight protecting you, Mr. Cole. I hope you understand what that means. Ethan met her gaze. I do, and I'll carry it. Morrison nodded once, sharp, final. Then she gestured to the other agents. Get Hale in the van, and someone call Helena. Tell them we're bringing in 2 bodies. The agents moved. Sarah stepped close to Ethan, slipped her hand into his. He squeezed it. Neither of them spoke. And for the first time in 3 years, Ethan Cole felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Peace, but it came with a price. And he'd never forget it. 6 weeks had passed since that night in the cabin. 6 weeks since Sheriff Raymond Hale and Detective Carter Daniels were arrested by the FBI. 6 weeks since Sarah Mitchell's evidence brought down the largest corruption ring in Montana's history. But the victory felt fragile. The trial was scheduled to begin in 10 days. And Ethan Cole still woke up at 400 every morning, hand-reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. Some habits die hard. He sat on the edge of his bed in the small apartment above what used to be an abandoned K-9 training facility. Outside, the Montana dawn was breaking cold and clear. Inside, Scout was already awake, sitting by the door waiting. Scout wasn't a puppy anymore. 5.5 months old now. 35 pounds of muscle and loyalty and instinct that grew sharper every day. His training had progressed faster than any K9 instructor had ever seen. Like Valor's genetics had given him a head start on everything. Ethan pulled on his clothes. Jeans, flannel shirt, no uniform anymore. He'd resigned from the Ashford Police Department 2 weeks after Hale's arrest. Couldn't stomach wearing the same badge that Daniels had worn. Couldn't trust the institution that had let corruption fester for 5 years. Instead, he'd bought this place, the old K9 facility where he used to train military dogs before Afghanistan, where Valor had learned to detect IEDs, where broken soldiers and broken dogs had found purpose together. He was going to rebuild it, turn it into something good. Scout barked at the door. Ethan opened it. The dog shot outside into the snow, circling the property. Checking perimeters, doing the morning patrol, he'd assigned himself without being asked. Ethan watched him from the porch, saw Valor in every movement, the way Scout held his head, the way he scanned the tree line, the way he moved with purpose instead of play. Footsteps crunched through snow. Ethan's hand moved to his hip, found nothing. Old habit. He'd stopped carrying since leaving the force. Sarah Mitchell emerged from the tree line, breath misting in the cold air, carrying 2 coffee cups from the diner in town. She'd moved into the small cottage on the property 3 weeks ago. Said she needed space from Ashford, from the memories, from the courthouse where she testified for 16 hours straight about everything Hale had done. She handed Ethan a cup. Morning. They stood together on the porch watching Scout work. Sarah had changed. The bruises were gone. The fear had faded from her eyes. But something else had taken its place. Something harder, stronger. She quit her job with the DA's office. Too many questions, too many reporters, too many nights waking up in a cold sweat remembering hands dragging her through snow. So she'd come here, started helping Ethan with the facility, running numbers, managing permits, building something new from something broken. Scout finished his patrol, trotted back to the porch, sat at attention between them. Sarah smiled. He's getting good. He's getting scary good. Ethan sipped his coffee. Yesterday, he tracked a scent trail that was 3 days old. Through rain, most trained K9S can't do that. He's not most K9S. No, he's not. They were quiet for a moment. Then Sarah said softly, "The trial starts next week." Ethan nodded. He knew. The state was prosecuting Hale on 47 counts, Daniels on 32, 6 other county officials on various charges, the biggest corruption trial in Montana history, and Sarah was the star witness. "You ready?" Ethan asked. "No." She looked at him. "But I'll do it anyway. You want me there?" Sarah's expression softened. "Would you every day?" Scout barked. Once, sharp. His ears shot forward, body going rigid. Ethan recognized that posture. Danger. "What is it?" Buddy Scout was staring at the access road, the long gravel path that connected the facility to the main highway. A vehicle was approaching, moving slowly, deliberately. Ethan's instincts flared. He set down his coffee. "Sarah, get inside." "What's wrong?" "Just do it." Sarah moved toward the door. Scout stayed planted, hackles raised, a low growl building in his chest. The vehicle came into view, a black SUV with tinted windows, government plates. It stopped 50 yards from the porch. The engine cut. Silence. Ethan stepped off the porch, slow, careful. Scout moved with him, positioning himself between Ethan and the vehicle. The driver's door opened. A woman stepped out. 50s, gray suit, FBI badge clipped to her belt. Special Agent Morrison. Ethan relaxed, slightly. Morrison approached, hands visible. "Mr. Cole, Miss Mitchell, sorry to drop by unannounced." Sarah appeared in the doorway. "Agent Morrison, is everything okay?" Morrison's expression was grim. "That depends on your definition of okay. Can we talk inside?" They gathered in what Ethan was calling the office, a room with a desk, 3 chairs, and maps of the property covering the walls. Scout sat by Ethan's feet, watching Morrison with intense focus. Morrison pulled a folder from her briefcase, laid it on the desk. "We have a problem." Ethan opened the folder. Inside were surveillance photos. Sheriff Hale, but not in a jail cell, in a hospital bed, connected to machines, bandaged, unconscious. What happened? Morrison's jaw tightened. Yesterday morning, Hale collapsed in his cell. Massive heart attack. He was transported to Helena Medical Center for emergency surgery. He survived. Ethan looked up, and during the transfer back to the jail, this transport was ambushed. 2 guards injured. Hale is missing. Sarah went pale. He escaped with help, professional help. We found shell casings at the scene, military grade. Whoever broke him out knew what they were doing. Ethan's mind raced. How long has he been gone? 24 hours. We've had teams searching. Roadblocks. Alerts. Nothing. He's vanished. Sarah's voice shook. He's coming for me. Morrison met her eyes. We don't know that. Yes, we do. Ethan stood. He lost everything because of Sarah's testimony. His money, his power, his freedom. Men like Hale don't just disappear. They come back, and they settle scores. Morrison nodded slowly. That's why I'm here, to offer protective custody, both of you, until we find him. Ethan looked at Sarah. She was trying to hide it, but he could see the fear creeping back into her eyes. The same fear she'd had in the hospital. The same fear she'd been working so hard to overcome. He looked at Scout. The dog's eyes were locked on him, waiting for a command, waiting for direction. Ethan made a decision. No, Morrison blinked. Excuse me, we're not running, we're not hiding. You want to protect us? Station agents here, but we're not leaving. Mr. Cole, this is serious. Hale is dangerous. He has resources, he has help, and I have a trained K9 and 3 years of combat experience. He wants to come here, let him come. Morrison looked at Sarah. Miss Mitchell, you understand the risk. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she straightened, looked Morrison in the eye. I spent 3 hours in the woods bleeding and freezing because Raymond Hale wanted me dead. I'm not giving him the satisfaction of making me run twice. Morrison sighed. You're both insane. Probably. Ethan closed the folder. But we're also right. Hale won't stop until he finishes this. Better to face it on our terms than his. Morrison stood. Fine, I'll station 2 agents on the property, but if this goes wrong, it's on you. It always is. Morrison left. The SUV disappeared down the access road. Ethan watched it go, then turned to Sarah. You sure about this? Sarah looked at Scout. The dog had relaxed, sensing the immediate threat was gone, but his eyes were still alert, still watching. Are you, yeah. Then so am I. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch with a rifle across his lap, watching the tree line. 2 FBI agents were parked in an unmarked car at the property entrance. Motion sensors covered the perimeter. Trip wires ran through the woods. Ethan had also modified the house itself. Back windows with quick-release latches, escape routes, entry points. The kind of tactical preparation that came from clearing buildings in Kandahar. If Scout needed to move, he could move. If Ethan needed an exit, he had 6, but none of it made him feel safe. Scout sat beside him, head on Ethan's knee. The dog hadn't left his side since Morrison's visit, like he knew something was coming. Ethan stroked Scout's head. Your dad would know what to do right now. Valor always knew. Scout's tail thumped once against the porch. Ethan's phone buzzed. Text from Jake. Heard about Hale. Need backup. Ethan typed back. Got it covered. The response was immediate. Bullshit. I'm 2 hours away. Ethan almost smiled. Thanks, brother. He pocketed the phone, looked at the stars, thought about the last 6 weeks, about how Sarah had slowly come back to life, about how this place was starting to feel like home, about how Scout had given him a reason to wake up every morning, and about how Raymond Hale wanted to take all of it away. Not going to happen. Ethan stood. Scout stood with him. They walked the perimeter together, man and dog, checking fence lines and sensor placements, making sure everything was secure. When they returned to the porch, Sarah was standing in the doorway wrapped in a blanket. Can't sleep either. Nope. She sat beside him. They watched the darkness together. You ever think about what happens after Sarah asked quietly, after the trial, after Hale is caught, after all of this is over? Ethan was quiet for a moment. Yeah, I think about it. And I think we built something good here. Train dogs, help veterans, make this place what it used to be. Sarah smiled. Ethan looked at her. If you want, I want, Scout barked, soft, content. And for one moment in the cold Montana night, everything felt right. Then Scout's head snapped up. His ears shot forward. A growl rumbled from deep in his chest. Ethan grabbed the rifle. What is it? Scout was staring at the tree line. At a specific point about 100 yards northeast, his whole body rigid, alert. Sarah stood. Ethan, get inside now. But before she could move, the night exploded. Gunfire. Muzzle flashes from the trees, bullets tearing through the porch railing, splintering wood, shattering windows. Ethan grabbed Sarah, pulled her down, covered her body with his. Scout pressed against them, both snarling. The FBI agent's car erupted in flames. An explosion that lit up the night like a second sun. Screams cut short, metal twisting, more gunfire, automatic, professional, coordinated. Ethan's combat instincts took over. He pulled Sarah toward the door, into the house, slammed it shut. Bullets punched through the walls. Pictures fell. Glass shattered. Sarah was shaking. Oh, God. Oh, God. Ethan pulled her toward the back room, the safe room he'd built when he bought the property. Reinforced walls, steel door, radio equipment. He shoved her inside. Stay here, lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. What are you going to do, end this? He closed the door, heard the lock engage, turned to Scout. The dog was waiting, eyes locked on Ethan. Ready. Ethan grabbed the rifle, checked the magazine, chambered around. Then he looked at Scout, remembered the training, remembered the commands Valor used to respond to. He spoke in German, the language of tactical K-9 commands. Schotten, shadow mode. Scout's demeanor changed instantly, from protective pet to tactical weapon. He moved to Ethan's left side, low, silent, a ghost. Ethan moved to the back window, the one he'd modified. Quick release latch. He opened it wider, looked at Scout. Jogged. Hunt. Scout's eyes flicked to the window. He'd been trained for this. Ethan helped him up to the sill. Scout leaped through in one fluid motion, vanishing into the snow below. Silent. Lethal. Ethan moved through the house, lights off, using shadows and cover. He'd trained for this. Urban combat, close quarters, multiple hostiles. He counted muzzle flashes through the front window. 4 shooters, spread out, advancing on the house. And behind them, moving slowly but deliberately leaning on a cane, was Raymond Hale. The heart attack hadn't killed him, but it had weakened him, made him desperate. He stopped 50 yards from the house, breathing hard, one hand pressed to his chest. But when he spoke, his voice still carried that same arrogance. Cole, I know you're in there. Send out the girl. Do that and you live. Ethan didn't respond. Hale smiled through the pain. No, then we'll come in and get her. And when we do, I'm going to make sure she understands what happens to people who betray me. Ethan moved to a different window. Watch the mercenaries advance. Tactical, trained, probably men who killed for money and asked no questions. The first mercenary came through the front door. Ethan dropped him with a single shot. Center mass, clean. The others scattered. Returned fire. Bullets shredded furniture. Tore through walls. Ethan moved. Different position, different angle. Dropped the second mercenary as he tried to flank. A scream from outside. Scout had found the third. The man went down, the dog's jaws locked on his weapon arm, yanking the rifle away with trained precision. The fourth mercenary spun towards Scout. raised his weapon. Ethan shot him before he could pull the trigger. Silence. Ethan moved to the door, stepped onto the porch, 4 men down, Scout sitting calmly beside the third mercenary who was clutching his bleeding arm and whimpering. And standing alone in the snow, gun drawn but shaking, was Raymond Hale. The sheriff's confidence had evaporated. He looked at his men, at Scout, at Ethan walking toward him with a rifle and 3 years of combat experience, and absolutely nothing left to lose. Hale raised his weapon, pointed it at Ethan. His hand trembled, not from fear, from physical weakness. "Stay back." Ethan kept walking. "You're gonna shoot me, Ray." "I will. I swear to God." "No, you won't, because you're not a soldier. You're a thief who wore a badge." Hale's face twisted, sweat on his brow despite the cold. His breathing was labored now. "You don't understand what you've done. I built this county. I made it safe. I made it prosperous. You stole from it. I earned it." Ethan stopped 10 feet away. Scout moved to his side. "You're dying, Ray. That heart attack should have finished you, but you couldn't let it go. Couldn't accept that you lost." Hale's breathing was ragged. His hand shook worse now, pain flashing across his face with each word. "I'm not finished. Not until she's dead. Not until you understand what happens to people who cross me." Ethan's voice was cold. "By stealing from schools, from hospitals, from the people who trusted you." Hale's legs trembled. "Those people are sheep. They need someone to lead them. Someone strong. You're not strong. You're just cruel." Hale's finger tightened on the trigger. "And you're a broken soldier playing hero." Ethan smiled. "Dangerous. Maybe. But I'm the one still standing." Hale pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. Empty. He'd forgotten to count his rounds. Ethan reached out, took the gun from Hale's shaking hand, dropped it in the snow. "It's over, Ray." Hale's knees buckled. He sank into the snow, face crumbling, his body failing him. 20 years. 20 years I ran this county, and you'll spend the next 20 in a cell." Sirens in the distance, growing louder. Red and blue lights cutting through the trees. The cavalry was late, but they were coming. Ethan turned back to the house. Sarah was standing in the doorway, wrapped in her blanket, tears streaming down her face. Scout ran to her. She dropped to her knees, wrapped her arms around him, buried her face in his fur. Ethan walked to them, knelt beside them both. "It's over. It's really over this time." Sarah looked up at him. Her eyes were clear, strong, alive. "Thank you," Ethan shook his head. "Thanks, Scout. He's the one who warned us, who fought, who saved us both." Sarah kissed the top of Scout's head. "Thank you, baby." "Thank you." The FBI arrived. Jake's truck skidded to a stop behind them. Morrison stepped out, saw the scene, looked at the burning wreckage where her agents had died. The first thing Morrison did wasn't congratulate them. It was walk to the flames. She stood there for a long moment, shoulders tight, jaw clenched. Then she turned back to Ethan. Her voice was steady, professional, but the grief was there, controlled. 2 good agents died tonight. They were doing their job, protecting witnesses. They have families, children. Ethan stood. "I know, and I'm sorry." Morrison nodded once, then she gestured to the other agents surrounding Hale. "Get him medical attention, then get him in custody, and someone coordinate with local. We need statements from everyone." She walked past Ethan, paused in a lower voice. "You did what you had to do, Mr. Cole, but those men paid the price for it. Don't forget that." "I won't." Morrison moved on. Jake appeared at Ethan's side, squeezed his shoulder. Didn't say anything, didn't need to. Sarah stood Scout in her arms, looked at Ethan, slipped her hand into his, didn't let go this time. They'd been dancing around this for weeks. The late-night conversations, the shared coffee, the way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she said softly. Ethan squeezed her hand, looked at her, really looked. The bruises were gone, the fear was gone. What remained was strength and something else, something he hadn't let himself hope for. "Thank you for giving me a reason not to." She smiled. The real one. The one that reached her eyes. We make a good team. Yeah, we do. Scout barked, soft, approving, like he'd been waiting for them to figure it out. 8 weeks later, Ethan stood in a courtroom in Helena, Montana, watching a judge sentence Raymond Hale to 25 years in federal prison. No parole, no mercy. Daniels got 20. 6 other officials got sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years. The corruption ring was broken, the money was being recovered, the county was healing, and Ethan Cole was moving forward. The K-9 facility opened officially on a Tuesday in April. 50 people showed up. Veterans, dog trainers, families, local press. Sarah cut the ribbon, smiled for cameras, gave a speech about second chances and healing and building something good from something broken. Ethan stood in the back watching. Scout sat beside him, wearing a brand new badge. Honorary K-9 officer, number 847, Valor's number, 7 months old now, 50 pounds, graduating top of his class in everything they threw at him. Jake appeared beside him. Impressive turnout. Yeah, you did good, brother. We'll see. Jake smiled. You always were terrible at taking compliments. A young woman approached, late 20s, short dark hair, walking with a slight limp but smiling. Jenna Brooks, Sarah's former assistant, the woman who'd been held in that cabin for 2 days before the FBI raid freed her. She'd spent 3 weeks in physical therapy after her rescue, another month in counseling working through the trauma. But she was here now, standing, smiling, alive. She testified at the trial, helped bring down Hale, and now she was here applying to be the facility's first administrative assistant. Mr. Cole, Jenna extended her hand. Thank you for this opportunity. Ethan shook it. Thanks, Sarah. This was her idea. Jenna smiled. I did. She hired me. Good. Jenna knelt beside Scout, scratched behind his ears. This is the one who saved you both. This is the one. He's beautiful. Scout's tail wagged. He leaned into the attention. The ceremony ended. People mingled, ate food, shared stories. The sun broke through clouds, warming the Montana spring. Sarah found Ethan by the old training yard, stood beside him. They watched Scout demonstrate basic commands for a group of kids. The dog performed flawlessly. Sit, stay, down, heel. Then a little girl dropped her stuffed animal. Scout picked it up gently in his mouth, carried it to her, dropped it at her feet. The girl squealed with delight. Sarah laughed. He's a natural. He's his father's son. Sarah slipped her hand into Ethan's. They stood together, watching Scout work, watching the facility come to life, watching broken things become whole again. Scout finished his demonstration, trotted over to Ethan and Sarah, sat between them, looked up with eyes that held more wisdom than any creature that young should have. Ethan reached down, stroked his head. Good boy, Scout. Good boy. Sarah's voice was soft. Do you think Valor would be proud? Ethan looked at the facility, at the people, at the future they were building. Yeah, I think he would. Scout barked, once, clear, certain. And Ethan Cole broken, Marine former cop, man who'd lost everything and found it again in the loyalty of a dog, finally understood what Valor had been trying to teach him all along. Home wasn't a place. It wasn't a building or a town or even a country. Home was wherever someone needed you, wherever you had purpose, wherever love existed despite the darkness. Home was right here. A radio crackled. Morrison's voice. Cole, we've got a situation. Missing hiker up in Glacier National Park. Search and rescue is requesting K-9 assistance. You available? Then looked at Sarah. She nodded. Go. He looked at Scout. The dog was already standing. Alert, ready. Ethan keyed the radio. We're on our way. He grabbed his pack. Scout followed him to the truck. They climbed in together, man and dog, partner and partner. Sarah watched from the porch as they pulled away, smiled, whispered, come back safe. Ethan drove north toward the mountains. Scout sat in the passenger seat, nose out the window, ears catching wind eyes scanning the horizon. And somewhere in the sky, in whatever place good dogs go, when their work on earth is done, Valor watched his son and his handler drive toward purpose, and he was proud. The truck disappeared into the Montana wilderness. The facility behind them stood strong. The future ahead was uncertain. But for the first time in 33 years, Ethan Cole wasn't afraid, because he'd learned the most important lesson a soldier can learn. You're never truly alone when someone trusts you enough to follow you into the dark. And Scout would follow him anywhere, just like Valor had, just like all good dogs do, forever.